I'm Chinese, of Chinese descent, talking through and interrogating Asian positionality within the racial hierarchy is a very difficult conversation for and because personally for me, I don't, how do I frame it? I want to sort of, when I have it with Indigenous and Black folks, thinking about anti-Indigenous and anti-Black racism within Asian communities, for example, and going back to the reciprocity, I that's a difficult conversation in the sense, for me, in the sense that I don't just want to sit there and leave it as I understand and I recognize. How do we move to an actionable point? And, I've learning to really sit with that discomfort has been, I think, quite generative for me.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm thinking about Bitter Orientals, because we got the funds to do work around anti-Asian racism, but we sat with it for over a year in a sort of discomfort and struggle to figure out what we would do. Had focus groups, and then from that emerged, from the community an interest in focusing on abolition of police and prisons because of how it affects Indigenous and Black folks. And so that sort of sitting with discomfort, I guess, is the thing that's coming to mind, I guess.
No, I appreciate you sharing that, because I find I'm in that position a lot, which I actually embrace. It's humbling.
Yeah. It's also like, I don't know, part of what I also because I get really, when I'm having a difficult conversation, and not just the one that I was referring to before, but you kind of get caught up. I kind of sometimes get caught up in my head to say something, and then I start fumbling my words. And sometimes it's okay, I think, for me just to receive it and just sit with it.
Yeah.
Because I've also seen other circumstances where it's just like, man, maybe I should have just been quiet.
Yeah. I'm learning to do that more often, which is good. So, what haven't we talked about that we should?
I don't know. I'm curious about your research. Can I ask you?
I'm curious about how people have difficult conversations or how people talk to each other. Yeah, I've been talking with people on and off the air and in podcasts like this most of my life. When I went back to school a few years ago, I was fascinated by climate change denial. And today's conversations are about race, gender, sexuality, reconciliation. I want to know why we've become so polarized and how we can overcome it. I've had some very difficult conversations with family and friends about masks, gender, politics, and it's really frustrating and sad.
Yeah. It's reminding me of, we actually had a conversation with a Hot Pot Talks guest a couple of days ago, where we were discussing sort of, this is linking back to the Limb Association project, but we were talking about sort of navigating not difficult conversation, but it was about like identity politics in the community, for example, where, there's certain like embodied, like bodily reactions that sometimes let me backtrack. It was a conversation about safe space. And, how do we sort of, the differentiation between like how our body reacts to a trigger versus a discomfort that if we sit with can also be a space that we can grow. And that's those sort of distinctions. And this came up because of the project that one of the things that I shared, with working with the Limb Association elders is like, if I came in to that project with these Chinese elders who are, are older, much older than me, that don't have that social justice language. If I came in with those expectations, we would have never been able to do anything together, because, you don't understand this politic and you don't understand this politic. So trying to find that the shared commonality and rather than just, oh no, can't work together because you don't speak my language, both literally and figuratively, has been something that I've been trying to figure out or navigate as well.
One of the things that I'm really curious about is how we build bridges into different communities. And if we come with a certain expectation, it's
Yeah.
difficult to build that bridge. If we
Yeah.
if we come with an openness,
Yeah.
there's a better chance of building a bridge. So I still have lots to learn. Unfortunately, there are some bridges that we can't cross. In my case, it's with some family and some friends who think Donald Trump's a patriot, that there shouldn't be a mask mandate, and and I have to walk away from the conversation.
Yeah. I feel you. I also have family in a similar position, and yeah, it's tough. Don, you mentioned something just a minute ago that was making me think. Oh, right, building bridges. It's reminding me, and this also really informed Love Intersections work. During the controversy, the Vancouver School Board controversy, I was working for David Diamond's Theatre for Living company, and he offered to do an exercise, which we organized, called a Rainbow of Desire. And the purpose of the Rainbow of Desire, it's a theatrical exercise where two people so how it works is it's in a controversy or a disagreement where both sides cannot come to any agreement. And the exercise is not about changing either view. It's about holding on to that moment of, albeit fleeting, solidarity. And we thought that it might work because what was often we felt being overlooked in that controversy was the fact that the parents on both sides of the controversy, so the supporting and the opposing of the policy, both love their children and both wanted their children to be safe. And so the exercise is you don't get to argue about the point, but it moves people through a series of theatrical exercises to hold on to that moment of solidarity. And yeah, anyways, it just reminded me of that. And it really inspired Love Intersections thought about, how do we find those moments of, or tools of building bridges, even if it might seem totally impossible, finding that sort of moment of connection.
I think that's a great example of learning how to get out of the way and engage in building bridges. I'm really glad you shared that with us.
But, I think maybe it's me being very dramatic, but some of these things also often in the middle of a pandemic do feel like really threatening and like life and death, I'm what I'm referring to is, part of the conversations that I'm having a really big struggle with is anti-vaxxers. And thankfully, there's few in my circle, but, I often go down the path of if we're not, those choices to not get the vaccine have a really big implication to people who are immunocompromised right now.
Yep.
And that type of life and death, it is really, it really gets us riled up. And, those conversations are really hard for me as I'm talking about building bridges. It's those bridges for me are really, really hard to find.
No, they're challenging. And I think every family has conversations like those. It's a horrible place that we've all come to. On the other hand, it's a wonderful place, or it's a wonderful opportunity to find the tools or develop the tools to build those bridges that get us closer.
Yeah.
But it's a work in progress.
Yeah.
Listen, I'm delighted to be able to hang out with you for a little bit. I love the work you're doing. I think it's fascinating. It's inspirational and transformational.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for the invitation. This was really lovely.
Our conversation today has been with David Ng, who's a PhD student and I think a PhD candidate now at the Social Justice Institute at UBC. If you'd like to find out more about David and his work, you can contact him at loveintersections.com, or you can find him at the Social Justice Institute at UBC. That's another edition of the Conversation Lab. This radio program and podcast is produced by CFRO-FM in Vancouver's downtown east side. We're on the territories of the Squamish, Musqueam, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. Our gratitude and thanks to them, as well as to the many not-for-profit organizations, community groups, and change makers around the world that support this program. If you enjoyed today's conversation, please consider becoming a member of Co-op Radio to support this program and the many others produced by hundreds of volunteers. If you have a story to share or know someone who does, please have them contact us at coopradio.org, theconversationlab.ca, and on many social media and podcasting platforms. This episode was cobbled together with some help from Brian McKinnon, Kimit Sekon, John Massacar, and Julian Anton. Thanks, guys, and thank you for listening. I'm Don Schaefer.